So I'm currently away from my studio at the moment, and I was thinking about ideas of how to produce some videos whilst I was away. And the idea of doing a Q&A, a question and answers video, has always been in the back of my mind, but I always thought it was a little bit self-indulgent. But having a YouTube channel with a camera pointed at me is rather self-indulgent, so I thought, why not just do a Q&A video? Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to answer some questions that you guys have been leaving in my comments of my videos and try and put it all into one specific video. I also put it out there on a number of different social media sites just asking you guys, have you got any specific questions you would like me to answer? And I'm going to do that today. I put together a bunch of questions that I'm hoping to answer you guys, and hopefully make this a video that if you ask me any of these questions, I can then refer you back to it. I've also roped my wife into asking me the questions today. She's just off camera. She doesn't want to be on the videos, but you're going to hear her voice. Starting with question number 1.
What is that yellow thing behind you in your studio?
This is actually probably the most asked question in the comments of my videos. And that yellow thing is actually a plastic replica of a weapon that's used in a video game, Gears of War. It's called a Lancer. Now, I'm actually not that big into video games, and I'm not even that big into weapons, but I just think it's a very cool thing. And I once saw this particular one for sale super cheap because it is slightly damaged, and I thought that would be quite a cool thing to own. And now that I've had my studio, I've got somewhere to display it.
What is your wrist size?
Well, that's an easy one. 17 centimeters, or around about 6¾ inches.
What is your favorite brand?
You know, that would have been a really easy question for me to answer a couple of years ago. I would have said Seiko. I love Seiko. I loved them then, and I thought perhaps they were the best brand and what I would consider my favorite brand. But then I sort of started collecting other watches, and then I started thinking perhaps it was Hamilton. For a short amount of time, I thought maybe it's even IWC. But right now, at this point in my watch collecting journey, I'm actually not quite sure what my favorite watch brand is. When I look at my collection as a whole, I have lots of different brands and not many duplicates of the same brand. So I'm not sure if I have an exact favorite. I have favorites like Seiko, Hamilton, and maybe IWC as well, but not an exact one only favorite brand.
How do you convince me that you need another watch?
Well, that's actually quite easy as well. We have a bit of an understanding that I can buy as many watches as I want, as long as I don't spend any money from our savings. That's pretty much how I do it. I justify the cost of any further watch purchases by paying for it in a different way. Generally funding it by the sale of other watches or pulling funds from other places and getting a bit of money together. That way, when I buy a watch, I'm not spending our savings.
Is there a resurgence of quartz?
I'm not 100% sure if there is, but there certainly seems to feel like there is. Quartz is not my go-to, however, I am trying to sort of force myself to like it more than I actually do by buying some. And I certainly see that people seem to be switching over, or at least leaning heavier into quartz than they used to be. I'm even starting to see some micro brands releasing quartz-based movement watches, which is really nice because the more options we have, the better.
What was your first watch?
Well, thinking back, I'm pretty sure my first watch was a Ani-Digi type watch. I don't know what brand it was. I think it might have been a Casio, but I clearly remember it had a white dial with an analog sort of dial on the top with a digital base, and it was on a black strap, but I have no idea where that went. But my first real watch, or what I consider my first watch, I still own. It was an automatic black watch from ADEC, which I think is a sub-brand from Citizen, and it was the watch that I then wore for almost 10 years straight.
Why did you start the YouTube channel?
I think it was around that time period where a lot of people started their YouTube channel. The COVID pandemic was coming in and it was limiting the certain sort of outlets you could do and where you could go, and I then couldn't travel as much as I normally like to travel, and I was starting to think about what else could I do with my time that was somewhat productive. It was also around this sort of time that I sort of fell down the rabbit hole of watches. I've been starting to watch reviews, understand that there is this world beyond myself and looking at individual watches, but there's this wider community. And I then started watching these reviews and then got to a point where I started enjoying watching the reviews. It became entertainment for me, and I had the thought, well, I think I could do that too.
What is your grail watch?
Well, that's another one of these questions that if you'd asked me a year ago, it was a very easy answer for me. It was the Grand Seiko White Birch, that high beat mechanical version, and I still absolutely love that watch. It's fantastic. But I've also started to lean into another watch, an Omega. It's an Aquaterra small seconds blue dial with a teak deck sort of dial textures on it. But I'm actually starting to lean away from those two a little bit as well because of the price of them. So they may technically still be my grail watches, but they may be grail watches that I may never buy. So I'm starting to think more about slightly more affordable grail watches, or maybe mini grail watches that I think may excite me a little bit more and may actually enter my collection.
Do you regret selling any of your watches?
This is something I've been thinking about a lot because I sell a lot of my watches. That's how I fund the next purchase and then the next purchase. But I only ever sell a watch when I'm ready to sell it, when I've had my time with it, I've loved it, I've enjoyed it, I've worn it, and now it's just sitting there unworn. I then still take my time and try it on again and see whether or not I really want to sell it. But recently I've had a thought about a couple of the watches that I've sold in the past and started to think, should I have sold that, or possibly should I repurchase it? But when I think that thought through past that, I then realize that if I bought these watches again, I think I'd then have a moment in time where I'd enjoy them again, but I'd then probably end up getting to the point of wanting to sell them again. So I don't specifically regret selling any of my watches, but I do occasionally miss some of them.
What brand do you think is overrated?
Well, this can be a bit of a scary question to answer because there's a few brands that come to mind, some few obvious brands that come to mind, but there's one that is at the forefront of my mind when I hear this question. And I want to put it into a bit of context because I actually like the brand, I like the watches, I think they're actually fantastic and I fully support them. But it's one brand that I thought, when I actually got hands on with it, that I was underwhelmed. I was almost disappointed, and I think it was that feeling for me because it had been hyped up so much, and that was the Watermelon by Studio Underdog. I fully support the brand. I love the fun nature of their watches, but when I got that watch in hand after seeing so many videos and so many people being excited about it, I got it in hand and thought, it's okay. It was made okay, the dial was okay, it was fun, the strap was a little bit average, the textures and the use of brushing on the case itself was okay. It was an okay watch. I liked it, but I wasn't particularly excited about it, and I was certainly underwhelmed by it. But at that moment in time when I was actually handling that watch, I did have the thought that, am I having these feelings because this watch is so hyped up? And I think that's part of it. But I think they're just a great watch, but possibly people are getting a little bit overexcited about it.
What is the most important lesson you have learned whilst watch collecting?
I learn lessons constantly by buying new watches, trying new watches, and trying to push the boundaries of the type of watches and the styles of watches and even the sizes of watches that I'm collecting. And I think that has probably been the best lesson that I've learned along the way, is to go outside of my comfort zone. It doesn't always work. I sometimes end up with watches that I kind of like but then end up selling quicker. But when I get a watch that is outside of my comfort zone, I often then find new things about the things that I like that I then take into the next purchase. There's watches that I've bought that are smaller than others, bigger than others, different styles of others, different straps, that I've then learnt that I actually really like that. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't broaden my horizons and push the boundaries outside of the standard watch that I think in my head is the style that I like. I hope that pretty much answers most of the questions that you guys asked me. I'm sure there's a few more in there, and I tried to sort of encapsulate as much as I could in this episode without going on and on and on. I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for watching my videos. And this one here, well, it's a little bit different, and it's not specifically about a watch, but it's sort of watch related. So I hope it was somewhat enjoyable for you. If you've got any other questions that I didn't cover off on, feel free to leave it in the comments of this video and I'll answer it for you. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and well, I've got some other watch related content just here.